right, it is definitely another great week, and of course, lots to discuss on the table. It is a show that we hope is going to put on the table key matters of this particular nation that we love so much, and it is called The Bottom Line KE. All the political, topical issues and matters that need to be dissected will be definitely brought on this particular panel, and we'll be able to be hoping to see you also participate actively, because these are matters that we'd love to hear your thoughts on. My name, as always, is Eugene Andangwe. Let me welcome to this premiere episode of The Bottom Line KE, and tonight we're talking about a very interesting topic, and the question we're asking ourselves is, has the Kenyan state been taken over by the politicians? Are we held hostage by the politicians as a citizenry? That is the question we'll be asking ourselves right here on the program. All you need to do to participate in this program is you can tweet me directly at Eugene Andangwe, or you can tweet at LookUpTV. We'll be able to sample some of your tweets in the course of the program. The hashtag is BottomLineKE. Let me bring in our panelists on the show today. On the far left, we have Javas Bigambo, who's a governance expert. Javas, thank you so much for making time on this program.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here.
Thank you so much. Also with us is none other than Farah Maalim, who is the former National Assembly Deputy Speaker. Mheshimiwa, asante sana for making time.
Thank you.
Now, let's get into the gist of this particular conversation. There is a sense of feeling that, there is what some people might call state capture. And how others define this is by the way things are happening. You know, you have one arm of government saying this is wrong, and the other arm of the government, that is the executive, saying that, we are correct and will continue doing things as we want. Farah Maalim, you were in a parliament that many saw as one of the strongest in their definition, yes. The best tag team, according to some people, you and the former speaker, Marende. There is a thought that we'd love to hear from you. Do you agree that there is a sense of state capture, first of all, before we even get deeper into this conversation?
Very profound one.
Mm-hmm.
Very profound state capture. I mean, it's epic proportions. But the question is, by who?
Mm-hmm.
The deep state has very few politicians.
Mm-hmm.
So the deep state is basically the executive and civil servants. So the state capture is there.
Mm-hmm.
The state capture, you see, the heart of any state, particularly an evolving and a growing democracy like ours, is the CEO, the head of state. Mm-hmm. The head of intelligence, the people who control the purse, Director General, if you could say KRA, Central Bank, security machinery, armed forces, as well as the head of the armed forces, the police, the criminal investigation department. That is the deep state.
Mm-hmm.
Head of civil service, the head of PS in charge of internal security.
Mm-hmm.
That's the deep state.
So these are the people who've always been told
Yes,
deep
it's not
state.
the politicians. The politicians have been captured
by the deep state.
by the deep state. But the good thing, the irony is the political class in the last two parliaments has accepted to be captured by the deep state.
Mm.
As long as they get the CDF, as long as they make the little money here and there, and as long as they think they can be assured of coming back again, the political class doesn't seem to have any interest in protecting issues that are very fundamental to the common Kenyan. So they are not the deep state. There's no politician who's a deep state.
Mm.
Usually the deep state are people who are in what you call the kitchen cabinet.
Mm.
You can have a kitchen cabinet, one or two ministers who are very close to the president. But I doubt if there's any cabinet minister who can be said to be part of that deep state.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling that you see, you reach a certain stage in power that when everything goes your way, you seek some level of absolutism.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where we're headed right now.
That's where we're headed right now. I wanted to hold that thought on that particular point. And let's bring in Javas here. Mheshimiwa Farah Maalim mentions or defines the deep state for the sake of those who have always been wondering who is the deep state. But from where you sit, Javas, he also asked a very critical question. Yes, there is a state capture, but the biggest question is by who? Who do you think, in your opinion, is actually doing what we're calling this state capture?
Thank you, Eugene. First, let me say that from the founding of nation states in antiquated Rome, we realized that nations and their states have always been founded around certain entrenched interests, driven by goals, dreams, desires, sustained, of course, by cumulative wealth within the territory of such states. And when we appreciate the place of wealth and the subsistence of nation states by those resources or the wealth, and then the entrenchment of the interests that drive those who are on the seats of power, then we get to realize why is it that those who are in the seats of power will want to have their roots going deeper for the purposes of sustaining their interests and securing those interests and ensuring that their personal interests and quests are served, at times in the guise of the interests of the state. And that is the one deep fact that drives even the interests of nation and even informs the foreign policy of some of the most developed democracies, the US, Europe, etc. When we look at the Kenyan nation state through the lenses of the question, emerging question right now of the state capture, I would then agree with Honorable Maalim that the state and the sense of capture is real and alive in our times. First, it is quite real that the political class, small segment of the political class, the ruling elite within the executive, as he has rightly mentioned, has captured the state. That capture itself is evident in the manner in which, one, resources are mapped, two, development resources are distributed, three, the manner in which opportunities for sharing these resources and the opportunities for rolling out development are allocated. That in fact, only those who are closer to those who are in the echelons of power get to benefit from such opportunities. And so it is proper for us to appreciate the hard fact that those who are in the driver's seat then use their wherewithal, use the various instruments of power to retain their grip on the state.
Right. But the question that comes to mind is that even our constitution is definitely very loud on the fact that the power actually rests in the people. With the people.
It's a fallacy.
It's a fallacy?
It's a serious fallacy.
You say so?
Yes,
Why?
yes. Well, because it doesn't. I mean, this is the American, look at any democracy, even look at the American democracy. We the people. We the people. But then, where does the role of the people comes in, even in the United States of America? It doesn't. You see, let me tell you one thing. There are very powerful ideological persuasions that are domiciled in serious divides within the society. And when you look at those, and that is dominant in the political contestations. Look at America, for example. They talk about the Democrats and the Republicans and what they stand for. What they stand for in both cases, more than anything else, what they share in common is that, as Javas puts it, they have to have a monopoly of resources in the hands of that elite. That nobility. You get my point?
Yes.
That nobility. I mean, other than the computers right now and the information technology, which has allowed a dropout from the university to become the multimillionaire, you know, whether Facebook or Microsoft or any of these things. These are basically chance effects that we see. But look at the other things. The richest people in America are people who have access to government contracts. So the decision is made well in advance.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Dick Cheney, look at the Bushes, look at all those people who were associated with them. Halliburton, for example, the war into Iraq and all those places and Afghanistan. Lockheed, you know what I mean? All these people who are manufacturing the state-of-the-art arms are people who basically are from that establishment. They have their political what do you call, boys who perform these things for them.
But Farah Maalim, there are people who have always argued that they have had stories of from grass to grace.
No. Listen, those are few and far in between, and you can only probably see it. Some of those lottery jackpots, similar to lottery jackpots, are the stuff you see with Microsoft, with Zuckerberg and the Facebook. And these are the chance things as a result of this IT technology right now, which I'm talking about. But everything else, the biggest industry in any country is the military industry. The military, you know, the industry. And where does that go? All these things, including the IT in America right now, it's the military. And where does that technology come from? Where is the, it's not the military that's manufacturing the F-16s and the F-30, whatever. It is the private sector. But because of the massive resources that are put at their disposal, the billions and the billions and the trillions of dollars that are put at their disposal. And these are people who run those institutions and those corporations have their own political boys. The boys who are supposed to do that state capture to be able to deliver for them. And then, of course, there are a few ideological things like, you know, you could see social democrats, you could see the conservatives and all those things. By and large, within that political class itself, the most important thing for them is that state capture. There's only one person in our modern history who tried to tame that one. And he left very fast. If you study the history of Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, who tried to tame that, and he left. And up to now, nobody knows who killed him, but the state killed him. The state killed him because the Warren Commission and everything else, there must be a very powerful complicity in that. Let me come back to our case right now here.
Right.
For a third world country like ours, which is growing, okay, death burden and everything else, we have our own challenges. There's no doubt about that. But who cares about the common man? You only have to keep happy the military, which is now beginning to ape and imitate other countries like Egypt. Egypt has been, the military establishment in Egypt is the elite, is a super class. That is the nobility in that place, in terms of wealth and everything else. And now, now we have our military, which is going to take over Kenya Meat Commission, which is going to have its own industrial base. That's the kind of cooperation we are going to have right now with Egypt. You see what I mean? And then you look at also the brazen manner in which every time there's a chance opportunity, whether it is taking a loan, whether it is SGR, whether it is COVID, whether it is everything, how that entrenched deep state individuals plug themselves into that money and literally take it. And you will see stories for a short while, oh, it's going to be investigated, somebody is going to be brought, a parliamentary committee is sent, but at the end of the day...
And then it will die away.
It will die away.
Javas, when you listen
So then the opposition, in its own, what they call wisdom, or individuals in the opposition, their own wisdom, have more or less resigned to the fact that, look, there's no way to beat the deep state. You can win an election, it's still going to be rigged out because the deep state is not with you. You can try and win an election and the resources are not there because the state resources and the entrenched, what they call deep state resource, it's used. I mean, nobody in the governing what they call system is using his own money to campaign.
If you can't beat them, join them.
If we have to now run against Jubilee or whatever other what they call construct that's going to be done with Jubilee, you think they're going to use their money to campaign? No. There's always this massive allocation to the intelligence, massive allocation to everywhere. What you call the slush funds. So certain sections of the opposition have decided, okay, let's also see if we can accumulate our own money. You know what I mean?
And forget about playing the opposition role. We'll talk a bit about that. But Javas, how can we be speaking about a constitution without constitutionalism? Because what Honorable Farah Maalim is mentioning, and he says that it's a fallacy, what we talk about, you know, the power belongs to the people. And he says, Ioni porojo, for lack of a better word.
You see, Eugene, I have read the contents between the covers of the four corners of our Constitution. I have read Article 1, and it indicates that sovereign power belongs to the people. I have read somewhere in Article 94, Article 1, that all legislative power is derived from the people. I have read somewhere in Article 129, Article 1, it says that executive power is derived from the people and is supposed to be exercised in the manner prescribed by the Constitution. I have read somewhere in Article 159, Article 1, that judicial power is derived from the people. The question then arises, who are the people?
Who are the people?
Of course, it is assumed that the people is the ordinary man. And this ordinary man and woman then are the ones that determine how they're supposed to be governed. Of course, that primary power belongs to the people, and it's presumed, theoretically so, that then those elected officials only exercise secondary power that is delegated or donated to them by the people. But that is as far as constitutional law theory goes in terms of these allocations. It is proper, yes, it is fitting. We have seen from the time of Marbury versus Madison in the US, we have seen to the time that the conversations between Hans Kelsen and Carl Schmitt in the discussions between the who are the custodians of constitutionalism, whether it's the judiciary, the legislature, or the executive. Yes. But then we appreciate the Montesquieuan thought that there is the separation of powers and the checks and balances to see how they check and work together for the greater good of a nation. But we have also seen the extent to which the raw thirst for power has led the executive to think that is superior and cannot work with the collegial spirit with the other two arms of government. Today, of course, in the respect to matters state capture, we have seen and we appreciate the extent to which the legislature in Kenya today is captured. Today, the legislature at the National Assembly and the Senate can hardly ask difficult questions.
Were they ever captured during his times?
Well, for them, I think, at the risk of praising Honorable Maalim and his team at the time, you can see that there was no shyness in asking difficult questions and holding the executive to the account. We can see that even how Honorable Marende, when he upon ascension to the power as speaker, to his seat as speaker, he could not be driven by the whims of the party that donated him for that position. And I think there is value in independence. State capture actually means that independence has been deprived of the state organs and even various arms. Comparatively, we can look at the issue of state capture and what has been happening down south in South Africa. We see how the Guptas, for example, and various individuals and private forces worked for the interest, beneficial interest of some people within the power, especially the executive, to drive their interests and propagate their interests. And to that extent, they also accumulate so much, and the general public end up suffering for it. And so, here in Kenya, when you look at it, first, this capture starts, it's at various levels. I can stratify this. That the levels of capture in this country could start from political parties. These political parties have captured individuals that they have sponsored into office, whether as MCAs or even as parliamentarians at the national level.
But isn't that how it's supposed to be? I've sponsored you. Why would you go against me
The
anyway?
issue is this. It's not about negating the ideals and the principles of your party, but being sober enough to engage in discourse with your party, and even if needs be, depart from it or have the public see that actually if the party is headed in a wrong direction, then you've got actually the liberty, intellectual, mental, etc., to speak that way. But we know very well that because of that capture, it's impossible. But now we know, for example, today at the county level, you see how MCAs cannot check governors. The moment they want to start raising critical questions, the governors open the wallet to the interest of the MCAs. If it's a question of having a trip to Brazil to see how spaghetti is grown, yet we cannot grow spaghetti in Kenya, we have seen them given that leeway for purposes of just entertaining them to keep quiet and not engage in their mandate of checking the executive at the county level. At the national level, let's face it, today, most politicians in Kenya today want to have beneficial monetary interest when they're in office. And the executive knows that very well. Haven't we had talk and stories that for as little as 10,000 shillings, members of the National Assembly have had to vote in a particular way in the interest of the executive. Today, when it comes to matters of allocation of tenders in this country, there are some critical questions that if you start raising, chances are you'll end up being found in a sack in Chania River.
Yeah.
Because of the state interests or the state capture interests and the moguls, the business magnates that are behind the running of certain affairs of distribution of certain goods to the state.
Right. Honorable Farah Maalim, I think it's very interesting that these are the things that we are aware are happening on the ground, or aware that this country is facing. But as you mentioned, the issue of the counties level, we've seen even in Wajir County today the current state of affairs. We are staring at a scenario where we could be looking at two governors operating at the same time. One of them impeached and then has gone to court. The court has, there was actually some orders at the county level to be able to stop the impeachment. But then today we are seeing, a possible reinstatement.
Yes. You see, Javas put it very well.
Yes.
Fortunately, it's sometimes the kind of communication we are making
correct
from this place might not be brilliant as it is, factual as it is, very philosophical as it is, might not become very easy for the common man out there to translate.
Correct.
When you talk about Kelsen and Montesquieu and all, these are the kind of things that we need to break it down to a common man's understanding. And I really appreciate that, and I think maybe this is what we're going to discuss, me and him, once we finish here. but let me tell you, let me tell you one thing. Yes. When we have a saying in our language, camels that have been stolen by the owner can never be found.
Okay.
If the owner has stolen his own camels,
yes.
how do you find
your
own camels?
You
can't find them.
Yes. So in this case, who's the owner, who's the camel?
You see, when the country's coffers are raided, when the misuse of power, when corruption itself is domiciled at the highest executive level of the country, either directly or indirectly, then of course, there is nobody else. Everybody has got to conform and fall in line. If you ask me today who is the richest family in this country, and I ask you that question, you don't have to think loud about it. You tell me it's the Kenyatta family, which is the second richest family, the Moi family, the Kibaki. It goes on progressively. Raila Odinga, Ruto. Now, does it take rocket science to understand that wealth is in monopolizing the instruments of government? Now, that is wrong from the beginning.
Yeah.
That's where we go wrong. I hear people say some of the best developed the countries that have the max, and then you come down and go through the first cabinet and the people who are involved in the first cabinet, the second cabinet progressively, to the Biwott family, to what you call the Michuki family, to all those people who were there, Koinanges, who basically have had a problem distributing their own wealth, but the wealth was running into billions even in those days, both in the form of assets, land, and everything else, properties. Now, what does that tell the new politician who is there? He was a student activist fighting for social justice, and then he comes into parliament, and then he sees what poverty is like.
Yeah.
He has a problem paying his bills, and decides, and then we fight, call us young thugs and everything else. Look back at all the people who are called like young thugs and pick them one by one. And then tell me how they're doing right now. You get my point? They're all doing very well. They all became conformist. All of them decided one way or the other to work with the system that was there. They became part of that system itself. So we have a deep-rooted value system based.
That was wrong from the word go.
That was wrong from the word go. That essentially finds its own justification in the sense that the common man respects also wielding of wealth and property. It doesn't matter how the wealth was achieved in the first place, but as long as you're wealthy, that very common man is happy with that and is able to listen to you.
Yeah.
So even when it comes to the political contestation, the wealthier people are, the more easily they'll be listened to. Now, then every institution has fallen in line. The executive is dominated by the kind of information I'm talking about right now. And I'm doing this purely for both academic and for historical purposes. That if we have to change in this country, things have got to change. Now look at, right now, I was talking to a good friend of mine who was brilliant, PhD holder in some of the most difficult and critical fields in the country, who has always been fighting for social justice and is now supposed to become one of the advisors and the strategists for somebody who has always called a thug. You get my point?
Who's this person?
No, I'm not going to say that.
Who's this person? Come on. Eh?
I'm not going to say that. And you know, you have been taken to court, and also your station will also be taken to court. So, and that's it. And you see, when you see a vote in the Senate,
Yeah.
and certain senators say, who are part of the team,
Yeah.
part of the committee that came up with a report, a unanimous report,
Yeah.
that this what they call governor should be impeached,
Yeah.
and does not deserve to hold office. And when it comes to actual voting itself, says, no, I'm an interested party, I have attended a matter before.
going to abstain.
I have to abstain. You get my point? What does that tell you, that abstention? Considerations. You know, he's a lawyer, you know what I mean?
Right.
Of acceptance and considerations, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some of the laws of contract, you know what I mean?
I see.
So basically, what I'm trying to tell you is that, and then you today are so vociferous and vocal about BBI, and you come up there with the most flowery speeches out there.
Yeah.
The next thing we know is that you are an advocate,
Right.
trying to save the BBI.
I think what we're gonna do.
So the point I'm trying to get at
Yes.
is this country, as far as the value system is concerned, has gone on a different trajectory. I don't know how that trajectory is going to be
fixed.
I have my serious doubts about it.
Yeah. Javas, you'll come in, but I want us to take a very short break. Of course, we'll be looking at the current guns that are blazing now, pointed at, okay, let me not say that because it might create a wrong perception, but I'm talking about the former Chief Justice and two former Chief Justices, that is David Maraga and Willy Mutunga, the guns blazing on the president and all that. Is this intimidation, and where will this lead us? I want us to talk about this when we come back from the break.
Can I
we have to pay some bills, otherwise we won't be able to pay for the lights that we have on there. All right, hold that thought definitely right there. Thank you very much. I want us to keep this conversation going. Of course, we're going to take a very short break. All you need to do to participate or be part of this conversation, #TheBottomLineKE. You can tweet me directly at Eugene Anangwe, or you can tweet at Lookup TV. We'll see you on the other side of the break. Stay with us. Right, welcome back. Thank you so much for still being with us right here on The Bottom Line KE. My name, as always, is Eugene Anangwe. We are asking the big question tonight, and the question is the country, has the country been taken hostage by the politicians? That is the question. Is there a state capture? And my panelists here have been asking by who is a state capture, and of course, I mean, who's the person taking the state captive? And of course, we've been able to hear some thoughts along the way in the first break, and we want to welcome you back to this second break. You can be part of the conversation. Feel free to write to us on our Facebook pages, Lookup TV, at Lookup TV on Twitter. Tweet me directly at Eugene Anangwe, #TheBottomLineKE. I have Javas Bigambo, who's definitely a governance expert, and the Honorable Farah Maalim, former Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for still being here with us. When we went for the break, we definitely were going to look at the issue of the judiciary. Yes. We've talked about the arms of government, and of course, Farah Maalim really did take us through some schooling on you know, how the state capture is happening, in his opinion. There is a sense of a clash, a battle of the titans, for some people who want to call it that, between the judiciary and the executive. We have the judges who came out and said the BBI process was illegal, null and void. The president has had several decisions termed as illegal. And of course, we have the former Chief Justice, David Maraga, and of course, Willie Mutunga, both of them. Yes, putting in their word on this, and very, very harsh indeed. Farah Maalim, do you think that these statements coming out of the former speakers, I mean the former Chief Justice, clout chasing, you know, intimidating the president, or these are facts and they hold water, whatever they're saying?
I have the utmost respect for both of them, by the way. These are two guys who I've known for a while and interacted with them all. Extremely decent, men of integrity, beyond any reproach, both of them. But they had their own challenges during their own times. And each one of them can be credited for doing certain things. Can also be blamed for certain collective decisions that were taken by the courts during their time. For example, you're talking about the governor of Wajir and this clash right now.
Yes.
He, Javas, is not just a governance person, he's also a lawyer, a legal expert in his own right, yes. And he mentioned that landmark case, which is called the Marbury versus Madison, which is a very, 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 very much a landmark case, which pretty much puts in line the challenges, the kind of the difficulties sometimes you have to navigate through when you have to try and arbitrate between the two arms of the government, the legislature, and sorry, the executive and the judiciary. Yeah. The current or the previous governor, I don't know how you want to see it because they're both the two governors there. Was on record in a parliamentary committee saying that he doesn't have a degree. Just a short while before he ran for this seat, because he was becoming an ambassador at that time. He was appointed as an ambassador. And later on came with a degree. So the matter finally, his election was nullified on the strength or the basis of qualification by the High Court. That ruling was upheld by the Court of Appeal. Supreme Court said, you look like you have a degree. You look like.
But the question here is...
And then again, here is the Constitution. I mean, the Constitution is supposed to be protected more than anybody else by the judiciary. And it is, I can't remember which article, it says justice and substantive justice will have to be served. And technicalities, you get my point? Before, it's always been justice, has always been denied because of technicalities. You will not, and then they say it's not in our jurisdiction to determine whether he was qualified or not. Look at now how the substantive justice itself is evaded. And that is the apex court. Apex court. You talk to other people, they'll tell you how, you know, how the envelopes changed hands and how massive amounts of money was distributed. And here is, I mean, in simple law even itself, a matter that was determined by the Senate.
So are we staring at a possible crisis?
Can I just finish? So that's what you understand and other people also understand. We need to understand this legal aspect of it. You see, the Senate has a role, and it is the Senate which approves an impeachment or rather, the impeachment process is carried out within the Senate itself. The Senate votes to get rid of that governor, and the matter ends there. Then people ran to court, but before they ran to court, these other guys were also very tactical. They went in and swore in the new senator. that ends the role of the judiciary.
Yeah.
The judiciary has no business.
Yeah.
No business.
Yeah.
Coming and saying that no, that one was sworn wrongfully. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like if you know the real content, it will tell you the real content of Marbury and versus Madison was that small technicality. There were these commissioners of peace who were done by Madison when he was in by the president who was there before, Adams, I think.
Yes.
And there's some of them who had not completed the process, and a new president was sworn in. But the process was completed. Only the presidential signature was what was remaining, and everything else was done. And the president said, "I'm not going to sign." You see what I mean? I'm not going to sign because I'm a new president. He refused to sign. And the Supreme Court of the U.S. says we do not have. Yes, you have a case. Yes, you are properly and legally appointed into this position by the authorities, the relevant authorities at the time. Yes, you've gone through the process. But the service, actually it was the service that was the problem. You know, the serving that thing. But the Supreme Court cannot direct the president to proceed and serve that, sign that and serve it. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And that is the independence of interdependence and the independence of the different arms of the government. No arm of the government can direct the head of that. Now that the matter has been overtaken by events and there's a new governor, the courts cease to have a role in that matter.
Completely.
Completely. Ultra vires. It's already gone. It's finished. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like they're trying to contest whether you should be appointed to a position in the government. But then before that matter is, orders are extracted in the court, you're already appointed and sworn in.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like a president basically getting sworn in. And so you can only go for a petition before the swearing in.
Before the swearing in process.
There's a room, there's a window in there.
Correct.
But here is, and then a certain judge comes and says, you are validly still in
the office.
That is why sometimes we've been fighting all along for the independence of the judiciary itself. But with those kind of judges, I think criminal investigations should even be conducted on their actions and inactions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because here are, you see, you don't create independence of the judiciary.
Yeah.
For them to have the independence to engage in corruption in the manner in which they're engaging in right now.
Right.
You understand my point?
I get your point.
And if you look at a lot of judgments that were done and rulings that were done, you will see how much they have deviated from the letter and the spirit of the law itself.
Right.
And because money is there, plenty of it, now that we have devolved corruption to the county governments and put billions of shillings at the disposal of governors, they have the capacity to come to a judge and give him 100 million shillings.
To pull the strings.
And he says, okay, even if I get sacked tomorrow, I have enough, this
I'll come and then you'll...
Just from the legal perspective, there's been an argument, who actually, on the command chain, because today there seems to be a tug of war of who is superior to who between the executive and the judiciary. We have had even Maraga, who actually, the former Chief Justice, who actually called for dissolution of Parliament. He's actually even said Parliament, or we should actually initiate the process of impeaching the President. And there are people who are seeing this as something of either revisiting or and we've seen also others who have argued on the case for the president, and they've said, if the president is the head of a state, then he's above the law, and no one can actually tell him what to do at what particular state. Where do you see this? Where do you see this ending? I mean, where do you see this culminating into?
Well, first, let me start by saying that I am for an independent judiciary, however harmful it may seem, than an enslaved judiciary, however harmless it may seem.
How do we define independent?
And independence here is not, of course, absolute. It's a question of having non-interference in execution of the mandate as prescribed by the Constitution. The non-interference aspect. Not non-cooperation, not lack of interdependence, but non-interference. Here, interference is and should be looked at from the perspective that the executive or no politician should hold the pen for the judge when the judge is writing a judgment. That is the aspect of independence, that let the trier of fact, which is the courts, determine or adjudicate a matter on the basis of the weight of evidence adduced before the courts and make a determination.
Yeah.
If somebody is not happy with the determination, then there are appellate mechanisms that need to be exhausted.
Yeah.
And trouble is that the moment there is inducement to the presiding persons in the courts, then the aspect of independence becomes limited because of that influence that is at times due to liquidity factors.
The lack of appointing of these 6 judges, do you see it as an aspect of intimidation to the judiciary, or you see that the president has valid reasons to decide whether to appoint them or not? Because it is bringing a lot of issues. During Madaraka Day, he had a lot of statements that he made against the judiciary. He even said that there are consequences that actually will come with such
Eugene,
decisions. Yes.
the clarity, the crispness of the contents of Article 166 of Article 1 of the Constitution invite no debate. Article 166 of Article 1 provides that upon the recommendation by the Judicial Service Commission, the President, for instance, with respect to matters, the Chief Justice, shall appoint the person recommended by the Judicial Service Commission.
Everybody.
The person recommended
Yes.
as Chief Justice.
Yes.
The persons recommended as justices or judges by the Judicial Service Commission with respect to these other courts shall be appointed by the President.
It's a shall,
yes,
not a may.
The President has got no other responsibility of reversing the process or questioning the process. If anything, we have got the Attorney General, who is the chief legal advisor of the government. The President is the head of government and state. Which means that when the Attorney General is sitting together with other representatives, sitting in the Judicial Service Commission, then the voices, the concerns, the interests of government, the questions that can be raised by government should be raised there and then. If at all, an Attorney General can be audacious enough to address the press after the process is completed, after the work, the task of the Judicial Service Commission is now functus officio, and says that now the President has got intelligence from the NIS. The NIS has got no role to play in the recruitment process. We know the critical role they play within the security sector, the gamut of the security sector. Then it means that the NIS was sitting on their hands and sleeping on the job if at all this intel could not be availed earlier.
Before the list was
The other thing is this. Right now, if at all the President tries to reverse because cannot send the names back to the JSC, will be contravening the Constitution, which means the President will be creating a ground for impeachment because he's violating the law. We have seen a cocktail of declarations by the courts that the President has violated the law variously. As we sit here today, the courts have determined that the establishment of the NMS was against the Constitution, contrary to the Constitution. It has been quashed. As we are sitting here,
Kenya Meat Commission,
the declaration has been made by the courts on the issue of the Kenya Meat Commission. Declaration has been made by the courts with regard to matters of the CASs, which means that the President has been on a spree of violations. That is the declaration of the courts. The pronouncement of the courts, if at all there is a question to do with aspects of that judgment, then there is the Court of Appeal, then later on the Supreme Court. That channel should be followed. But one wonders, what is then the wisdom of the legal advisors to government if at all courts can now adjudicate a matter and determine that the President went contrary to the Constitution?
After the advice of this
when
people.
we look at issues to do even with state capture, one of the elements of sustaining or propagating the capture of the state is the weakening of the judiciary. The judiciary is an arm of government. The question of superiority here should not actually necessarily arise. We know, of course, that in a nation state that is constitutional in nature, the President is the head of state and government. I have seen and I've heard some academics arguing that because the President is the head of state and government and the judiciary is an arm of government,
the head of the judiciary
then the President
as well.
is even the head of the judiciary. That person needs to find some time and sit in a classroom properly and also read the Constitution and also appreciate the history of the world and history of a constitutional democracy. Let us be real and true to the law. We cannot say that the president is above the law, yet the president relies on the same law to govern, swears to protect the same law. The president swore to protect the Constitution. That is chief responsibility number one.
Yeah.
If at all the president willfully violates the Constitution, then he sets an example of violations. Today, let's face it. How many orders have been given by the court, starting with the Miguna case?
Yeah.
And provisions of the Immigration and Citizenship Act of Kenya. Declarations of the court, the government has cast a blind eye on the same. The issue, various declarations by the courts.
Yeah.
The moment the executive, which is supposed to implement the law,
Yeah.
starts to have contempt of court,
Yeah.
the police service will lead as well, will follow suit with the contempt of the courts. The other thing is this, that to the extent that the paper upon which the laws are written is not respected and appreciated, then we are not making sense of the rule of law. When you look at Article 10, Sub-Article 2 of the Constitution,
Yeah.
the rule of law is one of the principles of governance in this country, which means it's one of the pillars of this constitutional democracy.
Right.
The moment the rule of law is not respected, then we are spitting upon the law. The moment we spit upon the law, we make no sense of a constitutional leadership.
Right. Farah Maalim, I know you want to jump in, but I want you to also add this to your submission. There are those who argue that the Constitution seems to be silent on what happens to the president or the head of state if indeed he is actually found to have contravened the law, violated this. Is he above the law at this point? Can there be anything that can be done to him? No. And if we talk about impeachment, we've seen the issue of numbers in Parliament. What goes on? What happens now?
You see, we are in a dilemma. And that dilemma, anytime you have a constitutional democracy and there's a dilemma, there's a constitutional body that has failed to perform its role. But because of that separation of power itself, there is no arm of the government that can direct another arm of government to perform its constitutional role. The judiciary rules on matters that are brought before it. The judiciary cannot impeach the president. You see what I mean? It can't impeach the president. When the president does serious violations of the Constitution, the requisite body that is supposed to impeach him is Parliament.
Parliament.
Because that's the legislative body. Now, when Parliament fails to do that, the judiciary's hands are tied. You get my point?
No matter how loud the head of judiciary shouts,
no matter how loud the head of judiciary shouts, and no matter what he does, there's nothing that the judiciary can do about it. Now, the head of state is not above the law. But again, within the Constitution itself, it says that you cannot bring the head of state to court on a, either criminal or a civil proceeding while
in power.
Still in office. No, not when he's still in office. And it's on the basis of that even matters like ICC and the rest of it, technically you cannot arrest a president of one country and take him to, because that law is there.
Yeah.
I don't know if Javas remembers, but there's somebody who went to court in the US to try and get Kagame to be arrested while he was in the US. And the courts ruled against that and said he's a sitting president, head of state.
The French indictment.
Yes. And he's a sitting head of state. And it's only when he's not in a head of state. And that's why Omar Bashir right now can be taken to court, because he's no longer head of state. He's no longer head of state. So we have dilemmas. When you push for independent institutions and independent arms of the government, you have to understand that independence goes three ways. You can't force Parliament to legislate and impeach somebody, or legislate in the manner that is befitting the interest of the country itself. Nobody can force Parliament.
Yeah.
That's why I think Maraga overreached his own powers in saying that the Parliament should be dissolved. You know what I mean? There's no court that can rule that Parliament should be dissolved.
Yes.
If I may just finish.
Yeah.
that was an element of judicial activism.
Yeah.
With all the respect I have for him, I told you I have a lot of respect for him,
Yeah.
but that was overreaching it a bit.
Yeah.
In any case, the independence of the legislature itself allows the legislature to create its own timetable. Even if within the Constitution you have, we created so many laws to operationalize the Constitution last time. We did not complete our roles in doing that. The subsequent parliament was supposed to complete the job that we failed to do, or rather we didn't have enough time to do, including having what do you call a referendum act. We do not have a referendum act even now.
If you had time, today we would not be having this.
Even if we, we don't have a law to guide how a referendum should be conducted in the country.
Yeah.
We don't have that.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And then even the issue of the Electoral Commission itself, the IEBC, the IEBC, and what a serious quorum in the Constitution constitutes within the IEBC. It's a bit silent on that.
Yeah, yeah. You see, even
so we do have problems.
Yeah.
We do have problems in basically, and we have problems because those independent institutions, independent arms of government have failed to perform. We're talking about, as Javas put it, we have a terrible, what you call judiciary right now that has devolved corruption. Independence has been translated into, they can go also on their own independent ways in which, in the manner they determine cases. You have a matter that essentially has one ruling in the court and a high court, somebody else goes to another judge in the high court and overturns that, and you go to that, and you see these things. This is ridiculous.
It's a mess. We have very little time left, but a viewer watching us today, right about now, they've gone through a very crazy past year due to the onset of COVID-19. Some of them are looking towards 2022 and they're wondering, are we going to be a hopeless lot? Are we a hopeless lot? We have all said, or actually the two of you have all said that there is indeed state capture. But then what do we do from here? What happens from there? Because our way of elections or our electoral processes have been designed in a way that it does not look at these key things that we've talked about. Most of the electorate, they first of all look at Mtu Wetu, our person, our tribe's king, our tribe's queen. And in 2022, we are likely to probably see the same faces that we are today talking about as having contributed to this state capture in office.
When we look at state capture,
yes,
Eugene, it extends even to the electoral process. Mm-hmm. When you look at the determination of the Supreme Court in Raila Odinga and others versus Attorney General and others, a 2017 case, facts of law that led to the overturning of the decision of the election in 2017, that IEBC violated the law. Those facts, those ingredients of that violation are still alive. Nothing has been done to ensure, for example, that the body conducting the elections, the IEBC, shall and can assuredly conduct an election that is free, fair, transparent, and verifiable. Nothing at all.
Verifiable.
Yes.
That is the main.
Secondly, when you look at the issue of the commissioners, even if the IEBC was to be properly constituted and having all the commissioners, does not remove or expunge or erase all the ingredients of the violation of the law that happened in 2017. Then why is it that it has had to take 4 years for vacancy to be declared in the IEBC? Does it mean that somebody did not know that there was a vacancy there? The other thing is this. The issue of transmission of presidential results was, of course, a challenge. But if at all we have to go by whatever has been observable in the various by-elections, we have seen violence in the by-elections. We have seen the issue of treating voters. We have seen intimidation. If at all these are happening within by-elections, and we have seen the way the state, which I call the state-sponsored violence, because sending lots of police officers to a polling center, a polling station, is intimidation. We have not seen, for example, even an effort to see a mechanism created where IEBC, together with the police service, works to identify police officers who will be instrumental in overseeing elections, trained in manners, in a matter to show or to lead them to properly handle violence issues that can ensue within a polling center or a polling station.
Yeah.
The other thing is this: you don't have to wait until an election period to make sure that there is no violence.
Do you see this as a deliberate move by those in power today?
It is purposive
Yeah.
on the part of those who are in power. For example, if at all, and with all due respect, the Jubilee government under President Kenyatta and Honorable Raila Odinga, through the handshake, were very serious about ensuring that we can have elections that are free, fair, transparent, and verifiable at all stages, whether it's a by-election, at a ward, a constituency, or even at the presidential level. They should have done so much within these 4 years within the subsistence of the handshake than sitting on their hands to wait for a possible BBI so that we can have electoral reforms. Having a prime minister in office and 2 deputies cannot stop violence from happening. Violence does not happen because you don't have a prime minister.
Right.
Violence happens because people feel that the will of the people cannot be demonstrated in the outcome of the election.
Right.
If at all, for example, Article 89, Sub-Article 4 of the Constitution provides that if at all amendment, delimitation of constituencies happens within 12 months to an election, then that delimitation will not be mirrored in that election, but the subsequent election. Why are they then forcing to have an amendment to the Constitution to have new constituencies, when right now, if we look at the calendar, it is nearly impossible that we can have a referendum and then have those new constituencies, and then now have new MPs voted in those new constituencies in 2022. So let's face it, the issue of state capture is being propagated and sustained, one, by the violation of the Constitution, the contravention of the rule of law or thwarting the rule of law, two, capturing institutions that are supposed to be enablers of good governance and even democracy itself. Today, IEBC is captured, the police service is captured. It's actually their instruments, much as I know that the police has to work with the executive, but they are being used as pawns, as poodles of the executive, which then demonstrates to any person that is objectively observing that the state is controlling affairs for its own interests of a few political elites.
Right. Farah Maalim, you have the last word because I'm told we are running out of time. You sat in a National Assembly that really did have a lot that it did in its own right. But of course, from where you sit today, where do we go from here? And of course, looking at the president's actions and the current state of the politics, what would you remember then this government for in your own words?
Well, we have probably had the worst 8 years, 8.5 years in my living memory in this country. I'm serious, I'm telling you. From every perspective, from rights, from insecurity, from the manner in which we're destroying all the institutions that the country is becoming. Not a country which is adhering to the rule of law, but ruled by law. And state capture in every sense of the word itself. And even the way the kind of government we have in here now, at least 6, 7 governors, sitting governors, did not have qualifications, and basically just went and got their qualifications. So glaring, so open that and nobody raised issues about it. There was a certain political correctness. There were no elections in Northeastern Province in the last election. I know of a senator who came in and who did not have half the votes of the person who won, but still was declared the winner. The woman rep was the same. The governor in Garissa had lost by about 20,500. The senator I'm talking about is the late Haji, who's an old good friend of mine, but lost, in big time, but still was declared the winner. So basically, what we don't have, we can't safely say that we are even remotely a democracy. And I think a lot of those damages were done since 2013, because if we had come the way we came, Kibaki was there. I think we were able to perform very well in Parliament, both as the leadership of the Parliament itself, that legislative body, as well as the members of Parliament, because Kibaki was not also somebody who trashed the laws in the country.
Right.
And when I asked somebody the other day, and he told me, we have so many governors who don't have qualifications who are there. He says, some of us doubt even the president and the former deputy prime minister who ran for elections do not have the qualifications. You know what I mean? I mean, it's bad.
It's bad.
So
we've run out of time.
What needs to be done more than anything else?
Yes.
What needs to be done more than anything else, because we don't have any other country.
Right.
And right now, Kenyans are resigned. The hopelessness has set in so much that they feel there's nothing they can do about it.
Right.
10 years back, the Kenyans were the most hopeful people. Today, I think they're the most hopeless people, because when you see a master's degree holder doing a laborer's casual job, you see what I mean, in a building site, then you know that we are in bad shape.
There's a bad shape.
Yeah.
I know we have a lot to say. We had a lot to actually touch on, of course, the BBI, and of course, you know, the nature of the tribal politics, and of course, probably if you would be running for office in 2022. I think this we can reserve for. I'm on talk to.
Well, I'm running for an office in 2022, and we're still hoping that against hopes, because I have been rigged out of parliament myself, God knows how many times, during the KANU time and even subsequent under this regime. Twice I was rigged out in the last election. I won the election for Garissa Township last time, but I was rigged out. And prior to that, I also ran for the Senate of Garissa County, and I was rigged out. But I'm not alone in that. I mean, there are too many people who have suffered the same fate.
And you're hoping to fix?
Well, we don't know. We don't know. I think as time goes by, the country is losing, or people in the country, the 50 million Kenyans are losing hope in the political process. Yes.
Gentlemen, I want to say thank you for making time for this inaugural program. I know we'll have another chance to be able to meet and exchange. And of course, to you who's been watching us from the time we started, I want to say thank you. Asante sana. We'll definitely be having more of these conversations. Tell us the kind of topics you want us to discuss in the subsequent editions. We'll definitely be able to talk about them. You can tweet me directly at Eugene Anangwe. You can tweet at LookUpTV. The hashtag, as always, is The Bottom Line KE. We'll see you again, same time, same place next week. As always, I'm Eugene Anangwe.